Hello, I'd like to welcome you to this week's class. In a moment, we're going to have 11th grade green group. It's going to teach us how to write the rhetorical essay.
Well, hello, I'm Lee back from the green group, and today we're going to be talking about the rhetorical essay, and I'm the one representing the green group. I got my colleague James with me. He's going to go up to the second half of the presentation. I'm leaving, I'll be going first. So first, I'm going to be giving you the definition of a rhetorical essay. It's basically an essay where you critique the author, or you analyze the author's writing, and you give your perspective how well he did on the essay. Second, I'll be giving you the steps of the essay. There's 7 steps when writing a rhetorical essay. The first step is you obviously have to understand the question. So when you're understanding the question, you have to write down the soaps and the appeals, or the pages, appeals and pages. And the style and the tone are very critical when dealing with the rhetorical essay. So first, the soaps obviously stand for, speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, and subject. And the pages are basically the 3 different types of writing, are pathos, ethos, and logos. But I'm not going to go into the rest, the inductive, deductive. I'm not going to go into that. I'll go to the 3 main ones we're dealing with rhetorical essay. We'll be focusing on that part. So, the third part is the thesis. The brainstorming. So I apologize. The brainstorming is the third part. The second part is the brainstorming. I apologize once again for mine. So the brainstorming is when you connect the styles and the pages together. You connect them, and that's how you brainstorm for the rest of your rhetorical essay. That you plan out your rhetorical essay like that. Basically what we use is the T in our classroom, which is Mr. Quick's classroom. We use the T, where you connect the styles and the tools with the pages, and that's how you work off your rhetorical essay. You connect those 2 together, and when you're connecting those 2 together, you might want to give a phrase for how you're connecting both of them together. Like when our classroom was writing a rhetorical essay, we were taught to write a phrase when connecting both. Like when we're connecting it, I remember one when we were brainstorming. It was, and I quote from Henry David Thoreau, how blind one cannot see serenity. And how blind one cannot see serenity. He was, the Paleys, he was using ethos, and he was obviously using, imagery, not imagery, he was using ethos and, here are my colleagues changed.
To continue on with the brainstorming, what my colleague was trying to say is that a quote from Henry David Thoreau would be, "How blind cannot see serenity." Obviously, as this example shows, it would be put under pathos for emotional appeal, and either tone or figure of speech depends on how you look at it in the styles or tools that you use. Because emotional appeal, well, when you say emotional appeal, it's like you're trying to talk to the reader, to make the reader feel something. And with How Blind Cannot See Serenity, there's obviously no facts, so it cannot be ethos. And there's no logical determination or critical thinking in this, so it's not logos. So when you cancel those two out, you're only left with pathos. And the way it's said and the way you feel, it could be determined under the part of tone. Now, moving on from that, you have the thesis. The thesis, what is the thesis? The thesis is basically kind of the last sentence of the introduction paragraph, my bad. It's the last sentence of the introduction paragraph, okay? And what it does is it kind of gives the reader an understanding or a way to kind of know what the whole essay or the whole idea of the essay will be talking about or will be covered during that certain section. Now, what does the thesis consist of? The thesis consists of three main parts. The author's name, of course, the use of or using of, and then we have the three examples. Since we have to be neutral, usually in a thesis you put your opinion, but since in a rhetorical analysis essay you have to stay neutral, or it's preferred that you be neutral. Instead of putting your opinion, you would use in use of, etc. Other words that, or by using. And then after you analyze the data, in your first step of understanding the question, you would get the main points you understood, and you would kind of put those in the three sections. The section of the the three example sections that you'll be talking about later. Now, outline. Now, in the outline, this is our next step, the outline. Step 4. Now, step 4 in the outline, you have to, 1, write the introduction on the top of the sheet. You have to, well, it's not really the introduction, it's kind of the thesis, because the thesis basically sums up the whole introduction. So you put the introduction on top, and then you have how many ever sections or points you're going to be putting up into that essay. Bullet points for your guidance, okay? And you're going to be putting it like this. You're going to have, say, the outline section. You're going to have outline section. You're going to have the section, where you're going to put what you're going to be talking about, where you got from the thesis, because it depends on how many points you put on your thesis as examples. Say, descriptive writing, the author uses descriptive writing, personal experiences. in one section, you're going to put those personal experience or, you know, whatever you're going to be explaining. And on the other box, you're going to be talking about the example you're going to give to support that. So you're going to basically do that for each one, okay? And don't forget to always put beside the introduction, you're going to put the appeal and the style. The appeal and the style has to be there, beside the point you're making, not in the example quote. And examples would be preferably quotes or paraphrasing, but preferably quotes because it's more solid evidence. And then at the very bottom of the outline, you're going to be putting the conclusion. Now, you're not going to be putting the whole paragraph conclusion, you're just going to put a sum up or a small, you know, summary or review of what that is going to be. Of course, the importance of the outline is kind of goes without saying. The importance of the outline is to guide you through your writing of the essay, make it simpler, make it more structured, organized, and create kind of a it makes it more organized and easier for the reader to understand overall. Now, moving on to the next step. Introduction. The introduction has a few main parts, and it moves kind of in a upside down pyramid section where usually in an argumentative essay, you would work down a pyramid structure where you would start with the most general and then get into more specific, which would be called deductive reasoning. Now, in an analysis essay, it's not really like that. You go through a certain format to accomplish that. You go through a certain format, and that format would be something like, starting with the author's name, you know, his book, the title of the book, then you have to use transitional words, which, mind you, are very important in the introduction and throughout the rest of the paragraph. Say the transitional words such as afterwards, to begin with, kind of makes it, as it's called, transitional. It creates an easier transition from one point to another, or to continue on to your point that you were using. Now, to continue on with that point you're using with the transitional words, there are many, many transitional words, so you don't have to be using the same one over and over and over. And also strong verbs. You have to be using strong verbs. Now, with strong verbs, the difference between strong and strong and weak verbs are how much emotion or how much they appeal, like, you know, what kind of emotion it creates within you. Okay, so if I say that I saw in that room, or when I looked into that room, or when he looked into that room, it doesn't really give you that emotion. But say, as a quote from the research essay, he gazed into the cellar room, in the cellar door. That creates a more emotional, more appealing thing that grasps you. Now, to continue on with the introduction, you'll put up those few points, you know, the transitional word, the etc., you know, the author's name, book, and then you're going to end it off with a thesis. So after the reader understands what's going on, he can make his decision on whether he wants to continue reading the essay or just stop there. Now, if the reader decides to continue, you can continue and appeal more to that topic you previously talked about in the introduction with the body paragraphs, which we'll look at later, until I have to make another point about the outline. Now, the outline, getting back to the outline, of course, has a certain structure. Okay, the outline has a certain structure. after we put in the introduction at the top, we need to get to, how do I explain this? You write the introduction at the top, of course, and it's acting as a basis, as a guideline for you to understand how it goes, where it goes, and how everything's going to work out. Those examples that you're putting out in the evidence side of the outline, it's not really the basis evidence that you're going to be using throughout the whole essay. It's just the main 3 points. Remember, the main 3 points. You're going to have to find more examples to go into deeper detail and understand more about it. You can't just continue on with that point, or just drag it on forever. You have to get more examples, more evidence that supports the point that you made. Like, you can't just go and get off topic. You have to support the example you made with more evidence or quotes. Now, how do you do that? How do you support it with more evidence or quotes? Well, you go back to the SOAPs. And as my colleagues tried to demonstrate, the SOAPs are 5 things: speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, and subject. Those you should find almost at the beginning of the rhetorical analysis essay. They are basically the whole structure of it. Like, that's the whole structure of it. If you don't get the SOAPs, there's no way you can get more examples to support your first beginning points. The speaker is obviously whoever is writing the book or article or etc. The occasion is why he's writing it. What is the purpose? Like, not the purpose in per se, but what appealed to him to write this book? What made him want to write it? Audience is, of course, the directed people or readers he wants to appeal to. Purpose is the purpose, what made him want to write it, what did he find so appealing for him to actually step in and say, I'm going to talk about this. And the subject, which is the main subject of the whole piece. Now that we understand the SOAPs, and we understand the thesis and the outline, and of course the introduction, we can move on to the body paragraphs. The body paragraphs are going to be the main section of your paragraphs. It's going to be the bulk of the essay. The main pieces of the puzzle that you're going to have to go through. Now, the way it's going to go is it's going to has a certain structure to it, but it's very similar to, say, how the introduction would go, where you give an example that you've previously brought out from the SOAP section, and you previously brought out from the SOAP section. You take that, you try to implement it in one of the paragraphs, and you work off that. Now, but the difference between, say, a body paragraph in formatting and an introduction paragraph is the first sentence. The first sentence of the introduction paragraph will go somewhat of the sense that you begin with the author's name, and then you use a transitional word, you use a transitional word and how he appeals to something. And let's go more into depth of the format of a body paragraph, okay? The format of a body paragraph would continue off of he states, or the author's last name, and stating, stating that the author last name, he's stating, his point, his position, his appeal, and how he continues off of it. Okay, so in the first sentence, what you're trying to get out of it is you're trying to see how it kind of, why he did, like, what's his point and what he's going to be talking about for the rest of the paragraph. Okay, then the second sentence, you're kind of moving on to the second sentence, you're kind of moving on to the realm of what he was trying to appeal to, or not what he was trying to appeal to, but what he's trying to convey to the audience, and an example to support what he's trying to convey. Now, an example could come in two forms. It can come as a quote, or it can come as a paraphrasing of a quote. Preferably, it would be coming as a paraphrasing of a quote, because that would show the reader that you understand what you are talking about. You understand what you say you do understand. Now, how would you do that? Now, first, let's talk about the easier one, which would be copy-pasting a quote. The problem with that, though, is that when you copy-paste a quote, it's just like the reader is just reading what the author wrote. So there's nothing you added to that. It's just what the author wrote. I mean, it's almost as if he's reading or he or she is reading the essay or the actual piece of the author. So it doesn't really give that, your 2 cents or your addition of the way you speak to it. Or it doesn't even support it that much, because you're not making a connection. You're just putting what you say and what the author said, and you're trying to make the reader make the connections. Where in paraphrasing, you're making connections for them and making it clearer. Well, even if you're staying neutral, you are kind of piecing it together and kind of directing the reader in your way for him to kind of agree with you, even though you're neutral. Not agree with you, but say, be on the same page as you are. So that's the point of paraphrasing. That's the point of paraphrasing. And quotation, there's a bunch of things you have to look out for quotation in quotes. There's a bunch of things. There's a few things. You don't want to have, like, quote errors. So you don't want to have you don't want to be using too much of the quote and creating somewhat, like, making it boring. You don't want to use too much of the quote, or try to get something that's like, fill the whole paragraph with just a quote, like a small part of, like, whatever you said, and then the rest of it is a quote. I mean, then why are you making this essay? You could just go read the information out there. Whereas but what you're trying to do is mainly connect all the points you're trying to talk about and what the author is trying to talk about. And then basically what's trying to happen here is that you're trying to make it easier for the reader to get on the same page as you, like I said, and kind of be on the same page as you and get to quotes have certain guidelines, as in many other. In quotes, I almost forgot. After every quote, you put, after every quotation marks, or whatever you put, you have to have the, well, this is more like part of the MLA format, but I mean, it helps also in supporting your idea in a analysis essay, so the reader can go back and search back at it, search back and check up on what you said. And that would be writing, if the author's name isn't written, then in that quote, then you mention his name. And the page number, it's specific, so that the it creates kind of a validity for your essay. It's not exactly rhetorical analysis, but it does relate it and creates a more valid point. Now, going into the examples portion of what you're going to have to be doing in the second sentence is that you're going to have to not only provide examples, but you're going to have to tell the audience what they're trying to appeal to, what is the author trying to do with those examples, what the author is trying to do with those examples, etc. Now, let's go into the third and fourth sentence of the body paragraph. The third and fourth sentence of the body paragraph will be talking about what he was trying to do with that examples, how it connects to the audience or the readers that he was trying to appeal to, or etc. Now, the final and last step, getting to the conclusion. The conclusion is basically where you sum up and where you bring up the last part of your conclude. You start off with a transitional word. You move on to start with a transitional word, and then you continue on with saying, trying to identify what the author used most in the styles and in the tools. In the appeals and tools. Did the author use pathos a lot? Did he use logos a lot? Why do you think he used pathos, logos, or ethos a lot in that section? Did he try to appeal with tone, or did he appeal with, or with imagery, or what was he trying to make you relive, basically? What was he narrating, or was he giving a tone? And not only that, but you're trying to also explain what he did with it. What was the purpose? There must be a purpose. Say, Randy David Thoreau, in the chapter of Winter Inhabitants, he used a lot of imagery and ethos in order to make up for what ethos lacked, for imagery to make up what ethos lacked, which is ethos lacks grabbing the author in. It creates huge validity for the writer, because it's giving out cold hard facts. But imagery, it puts the person into the scene and creates an environment around you, so the reader can be pulled in and grabbed into the situation and be more entertained with it, per se. Entertained and want to continue reading on. So the ethos creates validity, while imagery kind of grabs it in and brings it in for long. Now, that's where the conclusion comes back. That's where the conclusion basically starts and ends, where you're just trying to conclude back into that. Now let's review. Let's have a quick recap. Okay, you understand the question. Step one: understand the question, which includes the SOAPs, speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, and subject. Then after that, you go into the brainstorming part, where you have to pair appeals with styles, appeals with styles. Appeals as an ethos, facts, logos, logic, pathos, emotional appeal. Three very different things, with a list of different types of styles: imagery, narrative, detail, deductive, syntax, etc. The list goes on. Then you move on to thesis. Thesis is where you gather up basically all your ideas, or the ideas of the author that was trying to talk upon, and you bullet point them for later use, or basically to make the reader understand what's going on and how it's going to go. And then after the thesis, we're going to be moving on into the outline. The outline, which is containing not only the thesis on top and the conclusion, the conclusion on the bottom, but basically the bulk of your essay. You're going to have the points, the bullet points on one side, with, of course, their respective appeal and style, with the example on the other side, which will create sort of a basis for you to be using throughout the essay. And the example you put on the side does not really portray what it's not only going to be the one that you're going to use. You're going to be pulling out more later, but these are just for reference points for you to get back to and use. Now, thank you very much, and that is the end of the rhetorical analysis essay.